Low ball in, Harry Wilson. Oh, yes! Oh, yes! Done it! Across the face of goal, headed in. Yes! What a wonderful goal from Harry Wilson. It's been coming. Off you go!
After the game, babies are made.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back and today is a wonderful day as we celebrate the 2-1 victory over Brentford, one of the most remarkable games of football I've seen in recent times, and what a way to win it. Harry Wilson off the bench, 2 goals in injury time, the first time that's been done by Fulham since I think 2003 or 2004 when we we drew with Middlesbrough with 2 goals in injury time. Here to talk through a wonderful day out, we have Dave. How are we going, Dave?
How am I doing? I'm absolutely jubilant. I mean, what a result. It was just pure pandemonium in the home end last night. Look, we're going to get into it, but what a special day. Fantastic to beat that little club from Hounslow and putting them in their place. And can't wait to talk about it.
Nice one, and dressed up for the occasion as well. Thank you for that, Dave. Skibby, good of you to join us today, mate.
Speechless. I don't know what. I'm like a child who's just had Haribo for the first time. It's just like I'm overstimulated. But you're not going to comment how well dressed I am. I'm wearing my best hoodie just for you, Jack.
Give it time. You're looking wonderful, Skibby. Thanks for dressing up as well, mate. And first appearance on the podcast for Mark. Mark, how are we going today?
Yeah, feeling great. I mean, the only one with a Fulham shirt on, but happy to represent, happy to talk about the game as well. Was wondering how I was going to make this my debut showing when we were at 90 minutes and we were 1-0 down against our rivals. But a happy podcast, so a good note to start on.
Yeah, he did message me just afterwards saying that was going to be a very terrible pod debut, a dire 1-0 loss to Brentford. And it did look like it was on the cards for a long time, but geez, what a game to talk about, guys. That was one for the books. Before we do crack into it, though, another plug, as always, for the Discord, the That's So Craven Discord. You can find the links in our bio on Twitter or Facebook, everywhere you find our links. Please do get involved. Mark is, fortunately, another person who we've managed to pick up as part of the team from the Discord. Really great community place to talk all things Fulham and get some of the early breaking news, as well as we've seen from some of the stuff coming up from Fulham Transfer as well recently. So please do join up to the Discord. You will not regret it. And other things we won't regret is waking up at 4 a.m. to watch this game. The joy of being an international fan. But, I mean, what a game of football, guys. As I said, I think straight after the game, it was the most frustrating game of football and then the most insane elation I think I've ever had watching a game of football as well. It's up there in terms of results with the Juventus game for me, just in terms of unexpected turnarounds. I think I messaged you guys it was when Ben Mee came on, which was I think maybe 10 minutes to go in the game, and I said, I think we've lost this one now, game over, because Brentford had sat back for so long and defended fairly well, in all fairness to them. And it just felt like it was not going to be our day. No matter what we tried, nothing was coming off. But, geez, I mean, as Skibby said, speechless. The last person you'd expect, and not in a bad way, is Harry Wilson to come off the bench and grab 2 goals in injury time. Dave, I'll throw to you first, obviously being there. Before the game, give us a bit of your thoughts on the atmosphere and going into this one.
Well, I was confident before the game that we were going to win. I thought, looking at Brentford's defence over the first 9 games, I thought there was going to be lots of opportunities for us to test their back line. And I thought it was going to be a game where we rolled them over, actually. And that's really unusual for me to feel so confident ahead of a game. I also thought that we were, we had the right profile to kind of match their biggest threats. So Mbueno's been on fire this season. I thought he'd be well matched up against Robinson and Bassey, because you've got the strength of Bassey, you've got the pace of Robinson. And I thought we could nullify that threat quite easily. and that would just leave Whistler up against Anderson, and I'd take that every day of the week. So I thought we would be able to control him, and I thought we'd create lots of opportunities. So the only real surprise for me is there was 2 changes instead of 1. I think everyone knew that Anderson was going to come back in. But yeah, Nelson, you can't say he hasn't earned a start. But he came in obviously for Adama Traore, which meant that Iwobi had to switch sides. And coming towards the ground, I thought the Fulham fans were all quite excited and jubilant. I didn't sense nerves. I think everyone shared a certain amount of confidence that we would compete today, as we have all season. And it was a really good atmosphere in the Hammersmith end right from the start.
Skibby, you were there as well. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think you could tell from even before kickoff that, there was the anti-Brentford chants. There was a lot of a bigger buzz around the ground. I think even from kickoff, especially where I was sort of seated sort of in H6, people stood up for a bit longer than they normally would. I mean, they did eventually sit down when nothing happened, but it was sort of... It sounds really weird to say, because obviously other fans are going to listen to this and going, what, you stood up for like 30 seconds longer than you actually normally would? But that, for the Hammersmith end, and Dave can vouch, is actually quite big. That's that's unnatural. So there was a better feeling. There was a kind of sense of, you know what, there was a sense that you're going to witness something special. I didn't realise it was going to be as special as it was, but there was a real atmosphere of, we're going to take something from the game. And don't get me wrong, like Brentford last year at home, I think they beat us 3-0. Same team very much. I think they were without Ivan Toney because he was banned. So, for us to really want to get one over on our sort of... I use the term local rivals loosely. I think as the game went on, the rival term just increased and increased, because the more they kept singing Fulham get battered, and I was just getting wound up. So, it kind of added to the rivalry piece. But I think we wanted to get one over on them after embarrassing us 3-0 last year. But so I think there was a cautious optimism, but just the anticipation of wanting to get one over on Brentford, who, have caused us problems in the past. But yeah, it was vibrant. And yeah, I think now we're going to get into the actual game itself, but it didn't quite go to plan, I suppose.
And Mark, I guess you obviously went around when we previewed the game, but going into this one, how were you personally feeling in terms of how you thought Fulham would get on?
I was pretty optimistic, just to echo what Dave and Skibby were saying. I think Nathan made a great point last pod that, they seem to be scoring more, but we seem to be defending better. I thought the Robinson-Wemo matchup was excellent, and we saw that throughout the match. But yeah, I'd say quietly confident as well. There was a bit of a buzz. I know we're not really thought of as the loudest ground, but people were up for it. And over in the Johnny Hayden stand, we tend to be a bit quieter as well. But it was a good vibe, and yeah, and luckily we got what we deserved.
Well, let's talk about the game itself. And Fulham, it has to be said. Well, firstly, we managed to survive the first couple of minutes against Brentford, which most teams haven't managed to do this season. I have to say I was watching the clock for that first sort of 2 minutes of the game, just thinking, okay, let's try not to concede here, and we might actually win this game. And look, Fulham on the front foot for the majority of the game, I thought. Early doors definitely looked the better side. But yeah, Dave, walk us through the sort of early stages of the game and how you thought Fulham were actually dealing with Brentford, who sat very deep and looked like they were just going to park the bus and try and hit us on the break.
Yeah, I think very early they realised some of their kind of most potent threats were a little bit nullified, and they instantly put them on the back foot. We were kind of linking up really well down the left-hand side. ESR and Nelson in particular, their interchanging play was fantastic, and they were creating opportunities down the left and causing Brentford's makeshift right back all sorts of problems. And really, in the opening stages of the game, there was only really one team in the match, I thought. And actually, you could probably say that was the story of the evening, which I thought was which I thought was really interesting because Brentford, that's the thing about Brentford. They have kind of two ways of playing, really. They can play quite a kamikaze type of football, really aggressive, really pressing on the front foot, but they also will sit back and defend, which is very different to how we play. And we saw the ugly side of their game last night. And I'm very glad that football won in the end, and the anti-football failed. But yeah, so to the start of the game, I thought that we were certainly the team that were pushing, and it was a bit out of the blue when Brentford scored the first goal, which, to be fair to the guy, was an amazing hit. I wasn't sure if Leno could have done better, but having seen the highlights, I just think it was a fantastic strike. But yeah, that came out the blue, and then back to us being on top again, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think very little that Leno could have done with that one. Mark, was that what you were expecting from Brentford? We've seen, flowing football from them for the majority of the season so far, goals being scored. Obviously, they concede quite a few as well, but were you expecting them to maybe pose a little bit more of a threat to Fulham's backline?
Yeah, that's a great point. And look, I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible. But what I think Brentford did really well was when they were transitioning, they were incredibly quick. Now, I know we were attacking more, and the stats reflect that, but just moving the ball from, the back line all the way up to someone like Nguemo or Wissa on the sides, it was very, very quick. So I think they're incredibly well drilled. I did like, however, that we anticipated that. If you looked at Bassi a few times, as the long balls was coming in, he would move as if he would head it, and then he would drop his head at the last minute, allowing Robinson to collect it from behind. So I think Silva sort of anticipated those long balls and put in sort of strategies in place to make sure that we can nullify that. But overall, I think I was expecting that Brentford would sit back and go long, and that's how they seem to play for the majority of the match.
And Skibby, how important having Anderson back in the side? It makes such a massive difference to that Fulham backline.
Huge. I mean, you can't put it into words just how important he is in the centre-back position. I think I talked about it previously that, he is the hive mind. I love that term. I can't remember. I think it was Sam that came up with that terminology. But I just love the fact that he's the brain and whoever's around him is kind of like the limbs. But he is just so intelligent at reading the play. He makes it look effortless. I think that's the point that is really important, is that he makes everything look so easy just because he is that good at reading, the play and the sort of the attacking pattern. So it just breaks down before it really gets started. And I think, I do love his long passing. I do think that was a little bit off, but it was in a game where we didn't really need it because they sat back so deep that they could sort of combat anything that we sort of pumped up to them. And to be fair, their centre backs were just heading everything that we threw at them. So I won't hold that against him, but it is really important to have not only just his intelligence but also his leadership qualities that he possesses. I mean, he can't be that far away from being our captain again, just because the fans love him, the players definitely respect him. He holds that kind of he holds himself that kind of high regard in the dressing room, that I think that he is just such an important person just to have around the team, and it's almost a bonus that he's just one of the best players at the club, as well as his sort of leadership qualities. So yeah, him coming in, it reassures that back line. It relaxes, I would say, Leno. It relaxes Bassi, that they know that they have someone of such high quality sort of with them. And with that relaxation comes rewards, because when you're relaxed, you're going to play well, you're going to play better. So I think, yeah, you can't really put a price, you can't really stress how important Anderson is to this team at the moment.
And I think it's a good point you make as well, in that he elevates the players around him. When we saw really, really solid performances from Kenny Tete out to his right, who I thought was superb for the whole game. Calvin Bassey looked a lot better than he did when he was alongside Diop. And like you said, Leno as well. You can just tell that back four seems to know where each other is constantly. The ball was moving around that back four really calmly and comfortably. And look, it's interesting when you pull up the stats and you look at Anderson, his passing accuracy overall from the game was 79%, which was far below. I mean, Bassi was at 86%, Robinson 88%, Tete 92%, but Anderson actually played 24 long balls for the game. The next highest was Leno with 8. And the majority of those long balls didn't come off because of the way Brentford decided to play, sitting very deep and able to sweep those up quite a lot. So it's a tough one because I think defensively Anderson was very good. Offensively, maybe not as good as we've come to expect. But again, I think that's because of the way Brentford's set up for this game. And so I don't think you can judge him too harsh on that. All in all, we dealt with a very strong attacking side pretty well, I thought.
Yeah. I mean, if I may add to that as well, he did exactly what I'd want him to do in those situations, because I think you saw that Mbeumo, Vissa, and I think it was probably Lewis Potter, were really high up. So as soon as they took that goal kick, they were straight onto the defenders and trying to sort of, have that really high press. And you know what? I commend it. I don't want him to mess about with it. I don't want him to sort of stick to the game plan and force it when, there are no passes on, you lose the ball and then you go and you concede. For me, Anderson, luckily for me, I was sort of sitting on Anderson's side, so I was just watching. He would look up, he would scan, he would see absolutely nothing on, therefore he would float a ball up to Jimenez and hope for the best. And I would much rather that than you mess around with it, you lose it and you concede a stupid goal. And I think that, again, just sort of commends his intelligence of just knowing when to play the short pass and knowing when to sort of just get it out and reset.
I just intervene. I'd also say that even some of those long balls, they didn't come off, but we were winning the second balls. So it was progressing us up the pitch. So even if Brentford won the header or collected the ball from the Anderson pass, we'd win it back quickly. And I think, that's a good opportunity to talk about Sander Berge and his first half, which I thought was excellent. He has really come on in the last 2 games and is looking like another great bit of business. And someone who, I think there's a lot of questions about, could he play the 6, because he spent a couple of years playing a bit more advanced. And I think we're starting to see that he can, and he can be really effective. And I thought he was a standout performer in the half at winning the ball back and pressing them in midfield. And that allowed us to really, as I say, create a bit further up the pitch. And this is when we started to see the interplay between ESR and Nelson. And the only thing I would say is, maybe we could have been a bit, more clinical with some of the chances that we created down that side. But it's a good sign that those players are, able to break through that low block. And if we can just be a bit more clinical, it really could have been a different evening. We could have been a lot more comfortable.
And look, jumping back to the topic of Sander Berge. In fact, let's jump even further back, talking about defenders. And look, the Janelt goal does come around because of a poor touch from Calvin Bassey. He gives the ball away. And again, as you said, Skibby, we actually did very well in not playing ourselves into trouble. But at that point, Bassey maybe tries to take a touch when he really shouldn't and should probably just put his foot through that ball or put his head through the ball. In doing so, we lose the ball in a dangerous area. Brentford flood forward. We're having to track back, give Janelt the space to sting a shot in that Leno has no chance of getting to. I think if you look at the XG, it's like a 0.01 or 0.2 XG goal. It's a really well taken strike. But Mark, we've seen Diop make errors like that fairly regularly. We saw it from Tosin a lot as well. Do we feel like maybe Calvin Bassey needs to almost put all of the sort of ball playing stuff onto Anderson and be a slightly more rugged and Route 1 footballer?
Yeah, great point. I think that's his strength, right? And you want to play to your strength. So Anderson, his distribution is fantastic. He has those leadership qualities. Bassey, a bit more direct, right? As in he will get in your face. He'll be really, really strong. We saw him shrug off Mbeumo many a time. So that was a good battle that they had throughout the match as well. But yeah, he could just lay it off. He could choose the safer option, the easier path, or just get rid of the danger instead of perhaps taking that extra touch.
Yeah, it's a disappointing mistake, and I think one that will obviously be talked about on the training ground. Obviously, not too much, but it's one of those moments where Bassi should probably do better there, and I think we probably need to ensure that we mop that up a little bit better, and maybe part of that is Sander Berger as well. Maybe should be sitting a little bit deeper. I think at that point we're probably looking at pushing forward because Brentford were offering so little. We expect to get the ball there and push forward. Maybe Berger actually just needs to hang back a little bit longer, and that's kind of the problem with him being more naturally an 8, I'd say, than a 6, is that he tends to push forward a little bit more than maybe maybe Marco wants him to. An interesting point there on Berger. Obviously, Lukic is possibly a week or two away from joining back in with the squad. How do we see that one panning out? And I'll throw to you again, Mark, and just get your thoughts on Lukic versus Berger at this point, because Lukic, probably our best player at the start of the season for the first sort of 8 games or so before he got injured. But Berger's really grown into that role recently.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a phrase, calm and collected, which I think really represented Berger's performance. He looked very composed. He didn't look hassled at all when he was being pressed. He laid the ball off nicely. He progressed the ball up the pitch many a time. I don't know if Marco would go for it. I wouldn't mind seeing them both on the pitch at the same time. I think Lukic previously has played a little higher up when he was at Torino. That could be an option. We know Marco loves Pereira. We know Skibby loves Pereira as well. So there's that, and perhaps Pereira is the lost child, and he will never be dropped. But I wonder if there's a world where we don't have to pick between the two.
It's a good point. I mean, like you said, we're kind of getting to the point now where we're almost overloaded with quality players. When you've got to try and fit, well, that and also Marco's tendencies for selection, you got to try and fit Lukic and Berger into potentially one position. You got to maybe fit Berger and Pereira into a position. You got to fit Pereira and Smith Rowe into a position in the 10. Adding to that, we saw Iwobi drop into the 8 as well late on in the game. I think that was when Adama came on for Pereira. We saw Iwobi drop back. So it's obviously something that has been worked on the training ground, that those players are sort of expected to play in multiple roles. And I think the hardest thing is actually trying to get the right balance, because, so many players are playing quite well. You don't really want to make too many changes. And I mean, this is a Fulham team currently sitting in the top half. If things had gone our way, we'd probably be in the European spots. I mean, we're 4 points behind Nottingham Forest, who are third at the moment. And I know exactly where we would have picked up those 4 points this season. So it is a tough one in terms of selection. Dave, your thoughts on how you see that sort of panning out when Lukic does become available?
Well, I think Marco's now he's going to be in a position where he has lots of players on the bench that are really knocking on the door and putting pressure on the players in front of them. So, I do think that Marco sees Lukic and Berger as, the 6 options. But I do wonder if he'll explore a double pivot in some games, and it might mean that Pereira moves forward or comes out of the side, perhaps more so away from home when we're not going to have as much possession. It just gives us more options. And if they impress in those games, and show that they can, find the way to not just kind of be 2 6s, but also provide an attacking threat and link the ball with the attackers, then they'll have a chance of keeping their places. So it will be interesting to see how that develops over the next couple of months. You've got other options there, of course. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for Tom Kearney, but and you can see a little bit about the experience he brings to the side with his short cameo last night being involved in the goal. But Marco doesn't trust Tom from the start, which is fine. There's likely a very good reason for that. We know he's getting older. But we've got really good options in that part of the pitch, and we've got good options further forward. So it's a selection headache. And one, I think Marco won't be quick to make changes, but certainly if the players coming off the bench keep performing, he'll be like Reece Nelson has done. They can earn their place in the team. So yeah, just excited to see how that develops. Really,
it's something we talked about, I think, in pre-season and early in the year as well, when we were discussing the squad depth and looking at what you want from your squad in general. And we're always saying for a mid-table side, maybe upper mid-table pushing to European side, you want to have strength on your bench to come on the pitch. And I think we're getting to the point now where some of those bench players across the last couple of years and guys who are sort of on the outskirts, like Lukic, are actually starting to come through and become really key players for the team. And that just adds strength to your bench, because you look at the players we were able to bring on. We brought on Muniz, who has sort of proven himself over the last, let's say, 9 months to be someone who can come off the bench and score goals and has the ability to do that and is a decent backup striker. Harry Wilson, who we'll obviously talk about shortly, but is in blistering form at the moment. Adama Traore coming off the bench, who has been in great form so far this season. Eventually we'll get to the point where either Lukic or Berger will be coming off the bench, which is a really good option to have. We were having Reece Nelson coming off the bench. We're getting to the point now where these are really strong Premier League players who we can actually call on in our time of need, like we did last night. And I think that's, like you say, it's exciting. We're getting to a point now where we've got a really good Premier League squad and a couple of additions, and all of a sudden it's a really strong squad, because there's very little weaknesses on our bench at the moment. And if you look at players who are missing out, I mean, last night we didn't see Cuenca on the bench. No place for Josh King on the bench as well. We're really getting to the point now where, players who are decent enough to play Premier League football are actually missing out and not even in with half a chance of getting on the pitch. Skibby, your thoughts on another change from last night, Reece Nelson getting a start over Adama. Something we'd been toying with for a while and talking about on the podcast for a long time now, because he's been so impressive when he comes off the bench. But, I'll open it up to you and leave it open. How do you think Reece Nelson played last night?
I think he did everything right apart from when he got in front of the goal. I think there was a few chances he just snatched at. You just thought, like, I was messaging my Arsenal mates like during the game. I was like, does he not shoot across the goal? What's wrong with him? But no, I mean, I really thought the link up on that left was kind of absolutely electric at points. I think it's certain it was a certain pace and sort of tenacity that we don't really get with Iwobi. I think that, with Robinson into Smith Rowe and, playing through balls into Nelson and vice versa, they were sort of playing off each other, which I think really worked in our favour. And I think that was just sort of the way that we were getting in behind so easily in that sort of first half really was commendable to Nelson, sort of cementing that for us. And I just think that is a partnership which we should really utilise and sort of going forward. So I think he really did make a good claim for himself to sort of be a future starter. I mean, I know Adama came on and got an assist, but I think what we see with Adama is passages of the game. He's not always sort of getting at his man when he starts. I would say that, he starts off really sort of dynamite and you're thinking, oh my God, he's got him on toast. The Man United game comes to mind where, he was absolutely blitzing down that right-hand side, and then all of a sudden he just goes missing for about 20 minutes, and then suddenly he'll come alive again. And for me, it was Nelson was kind of more consistent. He was getting the ball, he was getting at his man, and it was very clear that as soon as he sort of beat the makeshift right back, I think that Dave mentioned, as soon as he beat him the first time, you saw his eyes light up a little bit, and you're like, right, as soon as I get this ball, I'm getting at him every time. And that is what I loved about Nelson, I think. And I think that's something which is really key that sort of he brings to the team. The only downside is obviously losing Adama's pace, where I think there was some times where we could have used that on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, But then also where Iwobi fits in, because Iwobi has been sort of Mr. Dependable, not so much you'll do normal winger, but it's just hard to sort of now find that balance of, right, if we're going to start Nelson, do we also start with Adama, who is probably just as direct, or do we need Iwobi to sort of protect that side? There was a point last night where I think Iwobi and Nelson switched sides, because I think Mbeumo started sort of growing into the game a little bit, though we needed Iwobi to go and protect him a little, protect that sort of left-hand side. It's just that balance, isn't it? But for me, I don't think Nelson made any kind of errors that made me think that he's not the right person. I mean, he's just as useless in front of goal as Adama Traore, apparently. But hopefully he gets a bit better and starts to sort of see the back of the net and gets a bit more sort of calm in front of goal and start picking his shots a bit better. And if he can add goals to his game, then it's no question for me that he is definitely going to be sort of the left winger going forward.
Yeah, he gets himself into really nice areas, I found. And well, Dave, I'll throw to you because I saw you were about to talk and I cut you off just quickly. But go for gold. Tell us your thoughts on Reiss Nelson's performance last night.
Yeah, very good. Caused loads of problems for their defence in the first half. As Skippy said, he kind of I think he made the wrong choices with some of those finishes. I think he could have gone across the goal, and I think we probably would have scored earlier. But great link-up play with ESR. I think credit to Marco Silva. I think he made a really good decision taking ESR and Nelson off when he did, because at that stage in the game, as good as their interplay was, it stopped being effective. We weren't getting in behind anymore, and we needed something different. And, you got to give credit to Marco Silva there, because last week we criticised the subs, for unsettling the team and potentially costing us a late goal. Whereas yesterday, I think he just got them all bang on and made some fantastic choices that really refreshed our attack at the right times. But I thought he played really well. I thought Iwobi looked a little bit frustrated on the right in the first half because he wasn't getting as much of the ball as normal. And he looked a little bit isolated out there. He looked like someone who hadn't played there in a while. And it might take a while for him to kind of get up to speed. The point about Adama is really interesting because, that's a third assist of the season. It should be double that. His crossing has been superb this year. In fact, I'd go as far as saying he's been the best crosser of the ball we have this season. His crosses have been really dangerous. You think about, we've scored from 3 of them. You also think about that chance he created for Iwobi against Newcastle. There was that header from Muniz against Ipswich. He could have double the amount of assists. And that's a really dangerous weapon. Of course, he's got his challenges in front of goal, but, he's on 3 assists. It could be 6. And if he had 6 assists, we wouldn't be talking about his place in the team. He'd be, a staple in the side. So, I think it'd be interesting to see if Iwobi can hold that down and on the right, because I think it's fierce competition for him. And does that mean Iwobi moves central or comes out the side? I think, again, another opportunity where we've got loads of depth and loads of options.
Yeah, well, Mark, I'll ask you, I'll pose it to you, I guess. Adama, like you said, Dave, came on, got an assist. He's got a few this season, and he's looking, I thought he looked probably our most dangerous winger for the game almost, apart from Harry Wilson. We'll get onto that. But in terms of coming on and actually, it's interesting because Nelson and Adama, you could compare the two as very direct runners, but I feel like their final product is very different. Adama is often looking to cross the ball, whereas Reiss Nelson is looking to score and take shots on goal. And I think a large reason as to why Jimenez was quite ineffective last night is because Reiss Nelson, a lot of the play was going through Reiss Nelson. He was making good inroads, but he never seemed to be looking for Jimenez in the middle. And I think that played Jimenez completely out of the game. And I'm struggling to think of any of the real chances Jimenez had for the majority of the game, because I just feel like we never really were looking for him. Iwobi's similarly not trying to put in a huge number of crosses. Do you feel like having those, ball carrying direct runners like Reiss Nelson in the team actually can sometimes maybe hinder your attacking options because he is so direct and wanting to go for goal himself?
I actually really like the fact that he's quite direct. I think perhaps the decision making can be better in terms of the shot placement or whether to lay it off or cross it in. But going back a few years, right, when we absolutely steamrolled the championship, not in any way that we're in the same stratosphere, but we really were the Manchester City of the championship, right? It was normal for us to win every game. And I attribute that a lot to having a huge Serbian bear of a target man, but also having multiple threats, right? So you had Harry Wilson with 10 goals and 19 assists. You had Cabano on the other side with something close to 10 goals and a lower amount of assists. And then we have, unfortunately, a Brentford player now, but we had Fabio also with 10 goals and 6 assists. When we have multiple threats, you can't just mark one player out of the game because then, they'll come from a different angle. So I actually really like the fact that we have the direct running and the confidence of Nelson to have a shot on goal and to walk past his man and for Adama to attack from the other side. But I do agree that Raul looked a little stranded out there. He was getting a lot of those long balls from Anderson in, but then the center back was beating the balls to him most of the time. And I think that probably left him a little bit frustrated since he was so isolated. But I don't know if that means he needs to sit back a little bit deeper, maybe just collect the ball and lay it off, or he wants ball to feet and then maybe skin his defender. Maybe something needs to change there.
And I guess jumping forward a little bit, for the Palace game coming up, would you potentially look at making changes again to the wingers? Iwobi, Nelson started this game. Would you look at maybe Adama coming on and therefore having a couple of very direct running options?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that we have that flexibility, right? And maybe we know Marco doesn't really like to change the system that much. So if something's worked, i.e. we've won, even if we haven't won pretty, then he will probably stick to the same players. But we have seen him be a little bit more flexible when we were looking at the Manchester City away match, right? Where he changed things up a little bit and we went a bit more defensive. We dropped ESR and we had Pereira in the 10. It should be case by case. Let's see if it ends up that way. I don't know if Dave, Skibby, you guys have any comments on whether we should change things up as well?
Can I just add to the Raul conversation for this game? I'm only going to say this once, so I need everyone to come close because I'm not going to shout it, but I think Thomas Frank actually did quite a good job on defending.
Yeah.
He basically consolidated the middle, crowded him out. You can have the ball out wide because, let's be honest, Nelson, Adama, Iwobi, they're not fantastic at goal scoring. They're you give them 10 shots, he'll probably score like 1 or 2. And Thomas Frank kind of knew that. So he kind of consolidated, packed out the middle. You can have the ball out there. You do what you want with it. But as soon as you get into our box, we're going to get rid of it. And he did that quite well. So I'm only saying that once. So I'm not repeating that. But
I think you just love Thomas Frank, though, Skibby, don't you? That's the problem.
I'm not going to say what I think of Thomas Frank. He's like the weird kid that you wouldn't pick at school and like for football. He's just sort of standing in the corner, but apparently he knows his stuff. But yeah, I'm not going to hold it against Raul because I think it was just a really tough ask. I think he had about 3 men on him every time we got the ball into the box, and he just couldn't make the right run. So I'm not going to hold it against him. But different game, different strategy. I think he probably scores 1 or 2 in that game.
Just on Thomas Frank there, I know we're just mentioning it now, but I think last night and how he set up and how he tried to, stifle us during that game without any real attacking threat or attacking a 10, that's a reason why he's not going to get a top job because the top clubs are not going to stand for that. And he's now going to, if he keeps doing that, he's going to get pigeonholed as one of the kind of mid-table managers, that can keep you in the league, but you can't really kick on. And I'd hate if Fulham played like that. Marco Silva he'd never line up in a game to just defend like that and to get everyone behind the ball and not try and play out and not try and create opportunities. I think really what we saw last night is who is the more exciting manager, who is the manager that brings the attacking intent to football matches. And I think Marco won the day.
100%. And look, it felt like trying to kill football from Thomas Frank last night. Like, it was dire watching a team sit back and park the bus as soon as they went 1-0 up. I mean, really, they tried to park the bus from minute one. And fortunately, this is the sort of karma that you get for playing in that fashion. You just can't actually do that for a full 90 minutes and expect to get away with it. I know it does sometimes come off, but you have these moments where you just, the floodgates break open, and they did. I mean, firstly, let's talk about the subs, because like you said, Dave, I just want to make a mention. We have criticised Marco for his subs in the past. They have, in my opinion, been fairly poor. For once, I feel like he got it spot on. We brought on the right players at the right times. Possibly could have been fractionally earlier. I think when you're 1-0 down and you see the team obviously parking the bus, early in the second half, we probably could have made those changes. But I'm fine with when we actually did. But look, it's the benefit of having players like Harry Wilson on the bench. He's in great form for his country at the moment, and is wanting to make an impact, and comes off the bench. And geez, I mean, Mark, what an impact Harry Wilson had in this game. Well, first, very simple question. Were you expecting Wilson to be the hero in this game of all the changes that were made?
I think, yeah, I'd be blagging pretty hard if I said I fully expected it. I will say, though, after we got the equalizer, like I mentioned before, I'm a season ticket holder. I go with my old man. I turned to him and I said, wouldn't it be nuts if we win? And he's like, there's no chance of that happening. It took us 90 plus minutes to get the first goal. And lo and behold, Harry comes up with yet another amazing moment for us that will be treasured for many, many years. But, you mentioned it. Harry Wilson is an absolute star for Wales. And you see him sort of make the headlines whenever he plays in the national team, right? But for us, I guess it sort of speaks to the strength of our team as well, that he can't really get too much of a sniff. But what I really liked from him is he was making these fast runs, right? And he was getting into dangerous spots. And I felt like our team was getting very, very frustrated. We keep going from one wing to the other. We seem to be intent on keeping possession and not taking risk. And sometimes you need to take risk. How many times have we seen against us, someone takes a pot shot from outside the box, but because of a weird deflection, it beats Leno, even though Leno had it covered? Sometimes I was wondering towards the last minute, guys, just have a shot. And I think the crowd were really urging the team. That's why we saw Baxi have a shot. That's why we saw Berger had a shot. The boys were sort of understanding what the home crowd were feeling. So I'm glad that Harry sort of had that desire and that confidence he had his 10 minutes and he proved himself, right? He made those runs, and he said, when you watch the post-match interview with Harry and also with Marco, Marco told him, get in a dangerous spot, get in the box. And I don't think Brentford were expecting that. To Skibby's point, they said, we're going to crowd the box. You have the wings. You can cross all day. Nothing's going to happen. But then Harry Wilson is a difference maker there. He gets in those dangerous positions and he makes something happen.
You got to give credit to Marco, though, because his instruction to Harry Wilson was, we're going to put you on, get you close to Muniz, and get in the box. You've been doing it for Wales. Get in the box. And Harry just said, okay, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And it paid dividends. But again, credit to Marco for seeing that, seeing how that would benefit the team in that moment. And I think it's another option for us in that number 10 position now, if Harry can keep making impact like that.
But is that a minor criticism, though, of Smith Rowe? He loves to stay out wide a little bit. Like, this was a game where Rowan needed some help crashing the box, and we almost had kind of Nelson and ESR standing on each other. You had Iwobi/Adama at the end on the wings. You just didn't have that midfielder getting in the box. And, you could sort of see Berger was wanting to, but, he'd obviously been given strict instructions to sort of stay on the edge of the D. And that's what I think, what would have been fantastic to see, which we actually did see early on in the season, which was, or even pre-season and the beginning of this season, was, Smith Rowe making those late runs into the 6-yard box, getting a tap in. Maybe that's something that we needed to see more from him, and kind of leave the wing work to Robinson and and Nelson. Yeah, here you go. I forgot he was on the wing there. But yeah, so Nelson and Robinson to sort of get the ball in. We need some more bodies in there to sort of help turn these crosses in. We just had Raul crowded out by 4 players, and they would just head it away. It just was too easy sometimes.
It's a fair point you make, because there was one instance where that actually happened, and Smith Rowe lays the ball out, I think could have been to Nelson or Robinson, can't remember off the top of my head, who clips the ball into the box, and Smith Rowe continues his run, and it finds Smith Rowe, and he probably should do better there as well. It's a glancing header that I think takes a deflection as well and is easily held, but it was one of those moments where you go, okay, this is the way we should be playing to break this down. You need to be playing that ball and then just getting into dangerous areas. And we don't. I think we don't see it enough from Smith Rowe, because when he does it, he scores goals. I think about the goal against Newcastle, where again he crashed the box and he gets the ball back after playing the ball out wide and pokes the ball past Nick Pope. I would like to see more of that from him, and it's a really interesting point you made as well, Dave, and I think it was Silver in post-match who mentioned that he told Wilson to stick close to Muniz and get into the box, and it's not something you'd expect from Harry Wilson when he comes off the bench. Usually he brings Wilson on, Wilson plays wide out right and is just sent there to basically swing the ball into the box over and over again for Muniz and Jimenez, who are usually both still on, to actually try and finish. But to put him in those dangerous areas, I don't think Brentford were expecting it. And let's talk about the first goal that Wilson scores. I've seen many people saying it. If Haaland scores that, it's replayed thousands of times and called, extraordinary and outstanding and amazing. And wow, look at this guy, he's a freak. Harry Wilson just with a cheeky little back heel lob into the far corner. Mark, did he mean it?
I'm not sure he'll admit himself that he meant it, but hey, right place, right time, anything can happen, right? Make that run, take that chance. So I'm glad that he had the stones to do it and he went for it. And yeah, I mean, by our former favorite manager, the fine margins, it just slides into the side netting over the top, and you can see, if you slow the video down slow-mo, you can see Flecken's utter disappointment. And that guy hasn't had a clean sheet this season, so I'm happy we didn't give him his first.
I was just about to say exactly what Carl on our YouTube live stream just said. Reminded me of Fulham Juventus, Clint Dempsey's goal. And it really did. The way it just sort of floats over the top of the keeper and nestles into the side netting. Skibby, like we mentioned, Wilson just getting into the box and into good areas. It was something we were sort of missing for the majority of the game. And as Steve said here, it was the 43rd and the 44th crosses that led to goals. Should we be getting on the end of a few more of these?
I don't know if you can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fine, because my camera has just died, but it's cool.
You're smiling, so it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. No, it's all good. Yeah, I think... that's one of my pet peeves at the moment. Is I think it goes with crosses, it goes with set pieces. I think there's a lot of flack for a certain player for putting crosses in, and we're not getting the rewards from it. But what I'm seeing is we're just not attacking it, and I don't think it's to do with the sort of the tactics and the routines. I think it's just down to the personnel. I think, Dave, we talked about this off air, which was, we had Tosin, we had Paulinho, we had some... Diop is a great example as well. He scored a few corners last season. We just don't seem to have that presence anymore of someone who can attack a ball or make that sort of bursting run to the front post and get a flick on. I think probably one of the last ones I actually saw was Kenny Tete making this sort of dart to the front post, which he normally does, and getting a flick. But I think there's something that we're missing. And I mean, Berger, he's 6'5". Get on the end of something. Just attack it. All we just need to do is get on the end of some of these crosses or set pieces. And I think that just comes down to work on the training ground, because I think it's a massive cop-out to say that, the crosses that we're getting in the box aren't good enough. From what I'm seeing, they are good enough. And I think the ball is probably only 30 to sort of 35% of the actual goal. The rest of it comes down to making that run, getting a good connection, and just, making the keeper work. And I just don't think I'm seeing that kind of effort from the guys in the box. It's almost like they're expecting a teammate to do it. I just want to see a bit of, passion just to get on the end of something and try and, take advantage of such a crucial sort of situation, which would be a corner or a free kick or even just a cross at this point.
And it's an interesting one because I feel like the kind of player that we want for a situation like that is Muniz, because Muniz is someone who really attacks the ball, especially when crosses are coming in. You constantly see him bustling around in a sort of Mitrovic kind of fashion where he's always looking to get on the end of those. Jimenez probably prefers the ball at feet, prefers to be a little bit tricky with the ball. We see it with his back heels and his little flicks. Dave, do you think maybe if Muniz had started this game, it might have been slightly different because he does find himself getting into the right areas?
Yeah, I see the logic in that. It's difficult to drop Raul in the form that he's in.
Yeah, of course.
And also looking at Muniz, the last couple of sub appearances, he's again doesn't quite look himself again. I wonder his confidence is kind of been stunted again by limited game time. But yeah, I see the logic in that. But I think it was just telling that when we had an extra body kind of trying to get on the end of stuff, when Wilson came on, we started to create some chances from those crosses and get some shots on goal. So I think there is a bit of it's a two-way thing. I think there has been times where the crossing and the set pieces haven't been great, but I think Skippy's right. We do have different personnel now, and we're not getting on the end of these crosses either. So I think it's kind of like a two-way thing. Going back to the goal. Originally, I didn't think he meant it. I wasn't quite sure what happened. I just saw the ball go up in the air, and the next thing I know, it's in the net, and we're all going absolutely bonkers. But it was having watched it back. I think when he didn't have a lot of time to think about it, Wilson. It was pinged into him, kind of at a funny angle, and I think he just thought, I've got to get something on this. Just take it towards the goal, take it towards the back post, and it's dropped in. So I think credit to him. And I thought it was a bit rich, Thomas Frank after the game saying, "Oh, well done to Wilson. If he'd have done that 100 times, And I thought, actually, if you line up like that, the way you did today, eventually it's going to happen. Eventually a team's going to score against you. And it wasn't 1 in 100 times. It was the first, time we got on the end of the ball and put a shot towards goal, and it went in. So, if they're going to come and, to a team and defend like a newly promoted team and try and hold on to 1-0 lead, then eventually it's going to come unstuck. So, he got what he deserved. I also thought, just to digress, he also mentioned that, and then we had the chance with Carvalho, which I'm sure we're going to talk to next, and it could have been jubilant scenes. And I thought, again, that one didn't quite go to plan either. And, the jubilant scenes are at the other end, Thomas. So,
what was the stat you used, Jack? 0.02%, or I guess it's a percentage, right? Expected goals. So does that mean 2 in 100 that goes in? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I guess it kind of is, yeah.
So
yeah,
just
off by
salty
100%. Look, Dave, you've mentioned it briefly, and let's talk about this one, Mark. It was, my heart was in my throat. In fact, it was in my guts, because the thought of Fabio Carvalho coming on and in injury time, I think it was the 90th plus 5 minutes of injury time. Yeah. What a great save from Leno. Thank God he saves that. And then, look, Carvalho actually does very well after having that shot saved to then lay it back into the middle, and a great tackle by Sanderberger. But what an important little passage of play that was.
Look, once again, credit to Brentford. That was a blistering counterattack. I think as Roslav is coming down the right and he sees the late run we would love to see Emil Smith-Rowe do this game that he's done before. And I think Carvalho puts that away 9 times out of 10. Great save from Leno, huge reaction save. Then bounces back to Carvalho, who lays it off, like you said. But yeah, could have been very, very different, right? We could have been on the other end of that sucker punch. bit of trickery from Carvalho, but so glad it didn't go in.
Ugh.
Definitely heart and mouth moment.
That I was thinking that when we were sitting at the game, and I said to the guy next to me at 90 minutes, I was like, I can't believe they're going to come here, play like this, and walk away with a 1-0 win. Just I can't accept it. But then I think I'd rather that than win 2-1 with Carvalho scoring the winner. That would have been too much to handle, particularly after just equalising. So thank God that was a good save, and thank Carvalho. He said before the game, Carvalho, he'd love to score against Fulham, apparently. Yeah, well, you
be on the
didn't,
pitch for that.
Yeah, you got to be on the pitch, and then don't shit the bed when you get your opportunity.
Yeah, never gonna get a better chance than that. Let's be honest.
That brings me to a point, actually. So a fight almost broke out behind me between two guys, because when Carvalho was warming up, this guy stood up and clapped him while everyone else was booing, and then obviously someone told him to sit down. He called him something. Before you know it, they're squaring up because over Carvalho, of all things. But where do you guys stand? Are you a booer? Are you a I don't care? Or are you a cheerer? Go on, Jack. You go first.
I told my 4-year-old son that we have to boo him this morning, so I guess that makes me a booer, doesn't it? I think it really depends on the player. Maybe in like 5 years' time, I might clap Carvalho. But probably not even. Would you have clapped Sessegnon? Probably. I don't know. It's tough. Would you clap Mitrovic now? Would you clap Mitrovic now? But probably not. In 4 years' time, probably yes. I think it's really on a player by player basis. And for me, Carvalho at the moment, it's similar to Harvey Elliott in a way. Like the way he's handled himself hasn't been ideal. And so I totally understand the booing, and I'm kind of okay with it.
Are you the same, Dave?
Yeah, I mean,
Were you a booer?
I'm not really. I didn't boo him, but I've got. I was just more focused on. I was more focused on our players than theirs, but I think I appreciate the Blues. I think he deserves it, and I hope it was part of the reason that he fluffed his lines when he got his little opportunity.
Mark, were you a booer?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a booer. I can't understand why you'd cheer. But I think like you said, it's how you leave, right? And if you leave for a good fee and you leave, with the good intentions of the fans, and that's nice. But I think his agent has really turned his head. Okay, Liverpool come in. Who's gonna really say no to Liverpool when you're a young, bright talent? But then you go to our rivals, you can't expect a warm reception after that. So didn't boo, but can understand the boos.
Yeah, I think I was the same. I just stayed silent. He was irrelevant to me. He just doesn't. He had a very short stint. It was a good stint, but now we're in a different time, and we're better off without him. He's not. So I mean, it's like an ugly breakup, isn't it? When you see your ex with someone who's like an absolute deadbeat, and you're like, yeah, fair enough. Enjoy that, well. So that's why I wasn't a booer, I wasn't a cheerer. I was just like, yeah, you made your bed, lie in it. So
yeah,
that's
100%.
It. But there you go. Interesting.
Well, in between those two goals, an interesting thing, obviously, that first Wilson goal was, I don't understand why it was checked by VAR, but it was. And it was interesting for us watching along on
Wait, which one?
TV.
The second one?
No, the first goal. I don't know exactly what they checked with VAR, but they did check it for some reason. It could have been, I think, the pass out wide before the cross came in. Maybe they were checking for an offside, but it wasn't even close. But it's interesting that what we saw on the TV stream, at least, Harry Wilson talking to the referee at that point and saying how long is actually left, because and I think that speaks to the psyche of Fulham at that point, going, this game is here to be won. And you could see him saying, 5 minutes? And the referee confirmed, yeah, there's still 5 minutes to play. And obviously we had that Carvalho chance, and I think Brentford get a corner. There was 6 minutes originally of injury time, and Brentford get a corner with 95 minutes and 30 seconds gone. And I remember thinking, okay, this is the last kick of the game, effectively. And I was almost surprised that the referee let it continue after the 96th minute, because I don't think the corner came in until basically the 96th minute. Fulham quite slowly really moved the ball forward. And I'll single out Claire for a comment here, and it's something a few people have said. The pass from Tom Kearney, who came off the bench and I think played really well, but pass from Kearney to Robinson, rather than trying to swing the ball in the box and panicking, finding someone who is in a good position, finding Robinson, who clips in another great ball. It's his 10th assist in the Premier League for Fulham, which I think puts him alongside only a handful of other players with 10 assists for Fulham. Clips it into the box, and what a header from Harry Wilson. Let's be honest, it comes off his shoulder. Does he fully mean it? No. I'm pretty sure post-match he saw him talking to Tom Kearney, and he was saying he was aiming for the other corner. But look, it doesn't matter. It goes in the back of the net. Keeper Flecken's, wrong-footed completely, and the ball sails into the top corner. And just scenes, limbs, whatever you want to call it. Just a brilliant way to end a brilliant night at the Cottage. Skibby, your thoughts on the whole move as it panned out?
Oh, you just felt like something was brewing. It was, after they missed a very good chance, fantastic tackle by Berger. Unbelievable. Just threw himself in there, conceded the corner you were talking about. But yeah, like you say, it was a bit sluggish. You were like, come on, guys, let's go. And I mean, prior to that, the ref had no hold on the game whatsoever. I mean, there were some dark arts going on. Player got treatment, didn't go off, refused to go off the pitch, and the ref just had no hold on the game whatsoever. And I was just like, he's gonna want to get off this pitch. And I thought he was gonna blow at 94, just because he wanted to end the game and get out of there. But I mean, yeah, as soon as that ball broke, you just felt like, we're huffing and puffing. We've already got a goal. That always puts a wind in your sail. And yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about. Somebody gambled. Robinson finally put a cross, not between the keeper and the sort of the 6-yard box, but pulled it back even further, to allow a late coming Harry Wilson to attack it. And yeah, I don't remember really what happened. I was in so much jubilance. It all happened in front of me. They all came running in. There was a fan on the pitch that got involved in the sort of the celebrations. That was crazy. And just that, seeing all the players in the stand and Harry Wilson was over the moon. It was just an unbelievable feeling that, and it was a well-deserved feeling. I mean, would I trade it for a more comfortable win? I don't know. It's a really difficult one, because my heart was in my mouth.
You can say no now because we've got the win, so it doesn't matter. You can absolutely.
Exactly.
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, it was a fan. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw celebrations like that. It was just last gasp. Just players are in the stand. I think there's the photo that I took that was on the That's So Craven Twitter, was just Bassey was somewhere in the crowd, Wilson's in the pile. There's just players everywhere, and there was one fan sitting down. I don't know if you've had a look at that. So if anyone wants to play Where's Wally, where is the actual Wally? In the riverside there, you can spot out that the one person sitting down and not enjoying themselves, but
who just quietly looks like Thomas Frank's son as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Put that out there. So who knows? Dave, your thoughts on those final moments?
Well, look, I think three really great. It's a really great move. Kearney picks the ball up. He doesn't panic. He doesn't just lump it forward. He shows his experience. He doesn't lose his head. Robinson's actually pushed right up the pitch. He's got himself really advanced and found a little gap, which again is, for him, after working his heart out for 90 minutes, for him to get forward like that and have that intent to try and make something happen, I think is massive credit to Robinson. It's a great ball by Kearney. And then Wilson, again, he's just doing what he's been brought on to do. He's to attack the ball in the box. And, okay, maybe it does come off his shoulder and it's a bit, you could say that's a bit lucky. But I think all three of those things are really, great from each of those players individually. And therefore we deserve the goal. Absolute pandemonium after that. I mean, I was jumping around with the people around me. And then the friends that I go to the game with sit about 5 rows in front. And that's where I ended up. I remember at some point doing a bit of a dive off the back of one of the chairs and kind of hitting my friend Michael sideways. And then I was on the floor, and it was epic. And you might think, it's just a league match against, Brentford, and, we've won. But I think it's the manner of the occasion and how we've done it. The fact that it's a derby, and the fact that they're just such an annoying fan base, aren't they? I appreciate they've done really well over the years. I still think they're just Leyton Orient in the Premier League. I've had a few good seasons, and I want them back where they belong in League Two. But I think that, what really bugs me about their fans is I only think about 25% of them are actually proper Brentford fans. The rest of them are all like Tottenham fans and Liverpool fans who've just got a cheap season ticket in central London, and then they sing all their little anti-Fulham songs, but really half of them don't really care as long as Spurs win. So it was nice to really shut those guys up and send them all back to Hounslow.
Tell us how you really feel, Dave. Mark, your view from the stands?
Yeah, it was absolutely nuts, and it was great. When that second goal went in, and we realized we managed to snatch victory at the very last moment. We had people standing on their seats. You had people standing on the divider where the old seats are versus the new seats. Everyone was absolutely losing it, and just an incredible moment. And I think one that I'll cherish for years to come. And yeah, it's good. They were quite chirpy, weren't they? Most of the match with their songs and their banter. So bit quiet towards the end, and that was nice to see.
Yeah, I'll pose a question, and we were sort of talking about it in the preview, how, Fulham don't see Brentford as a major rival. Do you think the victory is a little sweeter because it's over Brentford and because of how sort of chirpy they were throughout the game? Do you think it would have been as big a celebration and a roar if it was against, let's say, Everton or another team like that?
No, I don't. I think the derby's got the edge, isn't it, Mark?
Yeah, I think. But I would argue that I feel Brentford fans, or they seem to want this rivalry more, if you know what I mean. Like, yes, okay, we're both from West London, and it's good to always beat the other's team, but they're really intent on rubbing our face in it when they're winning. And I think when we're winning, we're just a bit classier about it. So it's nice. It's nice that we got the last laugh.
We are much classier, and that's because we're Fulham. Yeah, look, what a victory, guys, and what a great game to be able to talk about. Usually we're always scraping around saying, right, how are we going to get a full podcast out of this? But I feel like we could easily talk for another hour or so about this one. Well, let's have a quick look at the stats. We'll have a look at the table as well. Fulham, and it's something I said at halftime, Fulham were dominant without being dominant. The scoreline eventually reflected that dominance. Fulham was 68% possession to Brentford's 32%. 26 shots on goal from Fulham, 12 of them on target. Brentford with 5 shots on goal, just 2 on target. 637 passes for Fulham to Brentford's 317. 11 corners for Fulham to Brentford's 3. Fulham with only 3 fouls for the game. Brentford with 10 fouls. Some of those pretty bad fouls as well. I think about the one on Smith Rowe from I can't remember what the bloke's name is because I don't really care, but there were some pretty average tackles from Brentford throughout the game, just proving the mentality they decided to play in. A quick look at the table. Fulham now sitting in 9th place, 15 points, just the 3 points away from the European places. Arsenal and Villa currently sitting 5th and 6th. In fact, Chelsea sitting 4th with 18 points as well. So yeah, Fulham actually very well poised with a good run of games to come as well. We obviously play Palace, Wolves, I think, after Palace as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's a run of a couple of games here where Fulham can really make some inroads up the league at the moment. And as we're seeing, results aren't flowing for the teams up the top of the table at the moment. We saw Villa get battered on the weekend. We saw Chelsea draw with a poor Man United side as well. Forest are flying at the moment, but I don't expect that will last for the whole season. And Brentford, who are sitting just below us, I can't expect them to continue to pick up points like they have done so far this season. So there's definitely an opportunity there for Fulham to move further up the table. But a really good start to the season, 10 games gone, 9th place, 15 points on the board, a positive goal difference, and things looking really good at the moment. Before we do round out the episode, I do want to touch on the Fulham women's team, who had a brilliant win on Sunday, the first round of the Women's FA Cup, a 7-0 victory against Chesham United. Claire Green, who's in the live stream at the moment, was at the game, as well as a couple of Fulham players. I saw Muniz and Pereira were both at the game as well at Motspur Parks, supporting the girls, and what a victory they had, winning 7-0 against a team in a division above us. Just shows how far this team have come this season, and that victory puts them into the second round. They've been drawn against Royston Town. That game is going to be happening on Sunday the 24th of November. Royston Town sitting in the same tier as Fulham, but in a different regional competition. So, look, it should be a game that Fulham women would be hoping to win if they make it to the third round. That's where teams from the Women's Championship come into play. So there's definitely some potential massive fixtures up ahead for this Fulham women's team, who continue their 100% record this season. That makes it, I think, 40 goals so far this season from about 8 games or something absolutely ridiculous like that. It's been a brilliant start to the year. And Skibby, I wonder if you've got your special Fulham women's bit of merch there as well that you can share with us on the stream.
Check that out. Signed by
the proud owner
of Maddie Parsonson's match-worn shirt. I think it was against Dorking. Was that the one?
It was against Dorking, yeah.
Against Dorking. So, I mean, I've not been secret about my love for the ladies' kit, and I'm gutted that the club don't sell it. So as soon as this came up on a match-worn shirt, I had to get one. But yeah, smashing. I'm over the moon with it. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's like you mentioned actually at the end of the last podcast, the fact that there's the ability to actually own one of those AEW shirts and to have it signed as a match-worn shirt from one of the Fulham Women's players. I'm fortunate enough to have one winging my way as well. The postage was rather dear, let's be honest, but completely worth it. Tia Foreman's shirt will be hanging in my office soon enough. And as Claire says as well, Craven Cottage next Sunday for the Saltdean game. That's a huge game and a really good chance to get down to the cottage. Saltdean currently sitting top of the table, also with a 100% record this season. So it's a similar shootout to the games we've seen in previous years, where one team has to lose, and hopefully it's not Fulham. And the way we're playing this season, I'd expect it to be a very good game. Saltdean as well have strengthened their squad over the last 12 months, so should be a ripper. So please do get your tickets and get down to Craven Cottage for that game. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Mark, thank you very much for joining us today. A real pleasure to have you join the pod.
Thanks, guys. It's been great.
And what a game to be able to talk about as well for your first pod. Like you said, it could have been a pretty dire 20-minute podcast because we just didn't want to talk about anything whatsoever. But no, we really appreciate you joining in, and thanks for all your work in the Discord as well. A huge member of the community there, so really appreciate it. Dave, thank you very much for joining.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. You just want to keep watching videos and watching all of the commentary. We didn't touch on Dimitar Berbatov. He was an absolute legend in the studio last night, celebrating the goal and making some hilarious comments about these are the type of nights that babies are conceived, which I thought was brilliant. I just think it was great to get a victory in the derby. We're all thrilled about it, and just remember, everyone, Brentford very much get battered everywhere they go.
Very well said, Dave. And interestingly, we mentioned the Berbatov, and actually, if you re-listen to the intro music to the podcast, you might actually hear Berbatov's little comment in the intro music. But also, Dave, as he said, it's a night when all Fulham fans should be making babies, and your surname is Wilson. And Harry's a very strong name, so maybe it's time for number 2. It's a sign.
Well, you never know. You never know.
There we go. Heard it here first. Thanks very much, Dave. Skibby, thanks for joining today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. And Oh, I don't want the come down to happen. I'm still on sky high, so yeah, I just loving it all. But I mean, what I will throw in is a little piece of just a fact that I saw, based on what they just said in terms of the conception. So Wolves, if a fan conceived a baby on their last win in the league against Luton, the baby would now be born, and they still haven't won in the league.
Jeez.
So there you go. Signing off.
That's an exciting game for us to be looking forward to. And in fact, another game coming up as well, Saturday the 9th of November, Palace away at Selhurst Park is our next game of the season. So we will be previewing that later this week. Really looking forward to talking that one through. And again, thank you to everyone who's joined in on the live stream today. We really appreciate all the people jumping on board. Been really great to see all your comments flying through today. Really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone who continues to subscribe and like the podcast. Please do share it with your Fulham friends. And as always, come on, you Whites.